All right, looks like we are live, or I am live. Um, so I hope you guys didn't miss me too much. I was going to try and stream Friday, and it just did not work out. I ended up picking up a new laptop as a last minute buy. Not that I can afford it up front, actually, it is a cheaper model, but I do have a Best Buy card, so that was useful. And once I got into it, it's just not, it wouldn't be able to support a stream. So, um, what I'm going to have to do is buy some RAM for it, maybe a new SSD card to upgrade it a little bit. And I know I say all the time I'm not a tech guy, but I can figure that much out. So, welcome, guys. This is All Minus One. I am Bill. I haven't been doing that. I haven't been introducing myself at the beginning of the show because I'm expecting you guys to be here, my regular, loyal viewers. But I appreciate it very much. And thank you, Shelly, for being here as always. So, as a reminder, guys, I am streaming over on Entropy and D Live if you wish to watch the stream over there, or if you wish to support because they allow you to do that. Unlike YouTube, there is no threshold on those services for you to donate or for people to support their favorite creators. And the interesting thing with YouTube is they're actually allowed to put ads on your videos even if you aren't monetized. So they can collect off of you, but only certain people are allowed to get money. And I'm not a fan of their policies in general, so I'm probably never going to monetize on the YouTubes. So, anyways, hi Sam, thanks for showing up, buddy. Um, so uh today's stream's going to kind of be a little different because I wanted to do some stuff about talk about being in DC, considering I haven't been in DC in a long time, even though I don't live far. Um, and it is really interesting for me to be there and the way my heart and mind has changed over a period of time to which I don't like being in the city. We were right off of um, what were we on, Connecticut? I think I can't even remember. But we were right up the street from downtown, from the White House, from all that stuff, and we weren't there long. We got in late, and then basically as soon as my wife's meeting was over, which went really well apparently, um, we cut out of there. But it's crazy because I went down to the Silver Diner in Alexandria, which is a pretty good diner. There's one in Frederick, Maryland, so there's one a little bit closer to me. But they're around, and it's kind of like a local chain diner with locally sourced food. It's really good, and I wanted to go there. I was hoping that they would have this lamb burger that they used to have with this. I always forget what it's called. Is it merguez? I forget. It's a Lebanese sausage though. It's really spicy. It's super good, and they took it off the menu a long time ago. And of course, my wife used to live down in Alexandria, a few blocks away from there, so we used to go there all the time. So while I was waiting for her, I went to get lunch, and to make sure I didn't, screw up the many roadways to get there, I Googled it, and it took me some crazy, not crazy route, but more trafficked route than a better route in which when I went back into DC to pick up my wife, um, it was much easier, less traffic. In any case, um, but I looked at how far it was from where we were at. I was literally 3 miles away. It was a 15-minute drive. 3 miles, 15-minute drive. Now I live basically like a mile away from a gas station up the street, and it takes me about a whole minute to get there in the car. So I don't understand these things, nor do I understand why people want to live in these areas. And then on top of that, right, I um I couldn't stand like the urban sprawl or the city itself when we were that close to downtown. Now the buildings can't be any higher than the Capitol building, but they're still high enough that you can't see the sky unless you look straight up, right? Or you look out down the road or whatever. It's kind of weird and suffocating to me. Hi, Holly. Yes, I am back. Sorry we didn't stream last night. I was doing computer stuff. So, um, but, no biggie. By the way, folks, if you guys weren't aware, Holly and I, will be streaming on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. for the Ends Justify the Memes. And it looks like we should have Jeremy and Delaney with us, at least Jeremy, that is, of the Weekly Narrative. So I'll probably set up that stream after I get off of here. But it should be a good time. And I'm not going to be so meme heavy. I had 130 something memes last week. Excuse me. So anyways, guys, I started a few minutes late, but we're about 10 minutes in, so I want to get into some of these things that I'm talking about right now. And again, it's going to be a little bit different today. I'm not going to be doing a lot of reading today, probably, although we'll look at a few things, and I will be playing some videos, some interesting things I think that we should all check out, including Carlin Borenchenko has been on it with the, or Borysenko. I always mess up her name. In any case, whatever it is, you guys know Carlin. But she's been on this New Hampshire Libertarian Party thing. And I believe Sniper streamed about this yesterday on his morning stream. That is Sniper's Nest. If you guys aren't aware of him, he's in the chat on occasion. I didn't catch his stream, but I will tell you that generally he does a good job of coverage, and he's very aware of the issues and what's going on, and he's in he's in our little clique between whatever we are, between Don and Yiz and whatever else. So just to bring up that later, we'll talk about it. Very interesting, and it is a case of power, in my opinion, all about power, someone's power over others. Very libertarian of them. So I brought this up. I could do the satellite image, but it doesn't show you anything. You can't tell. But you can see the massive roadways. And I wanted to bring this up. If you guys weren't aware, the image that I had for the stream is a real image of the pentagram in DC with an open side. There is a lot of interesting architecture in DC. Very Romanesque, very pagan. And there is a lot of interesting stuff there. So that's why I put it, in the belly of Babylon. Because it is. And this is really interesting. So again, I was here in Arlington. And we were staying in downtown DC. And you basically are 3 miles away. It takes 15 minutes to get there. Or more, depending on traffic. But it's kind of really gross. Like, you look at this. Right, all this over here, like Leesburg's kind of country, you can see very rural areas here, but all this white stuff is the urban sprawl. And literally, folks, there is greenery around, like gardens and all that kind of stuff. But this is the massive mega city, whether it's DC or not. Arlington, McLean, Falls Church, all these places. This is just sprawls into another. Alexandria, you can't tell when one place stops to another. My wife and I came in through the Silver Spring side, actually Chevy Chase. So instead of coming down south and back north, which is what a lot of people often do, Chevy Chase is here. This doesn't look like it's that far, and it's really not. It took us like an hour from Chevy Chase to get into downtown DC. Let me zoom in on that some more so you guys can kind of see this. So Chevy Chase, Maryland is here. Hopefully, maybe you can see that. I don't know how well it's showing up. And yes, we come through here, and of course, you pass the National Cathedral, and we didn't go down into Georgetown. We came in through here's Connecticut Avenue. Came in through, by the National Zoo. Actually, I think we left through the National Cathedral. That's what it was. And we came down this way. So I guess I was right. But either way, it's not very far, and it takes forever. And it's crazy. And then, while I'm there at the hotel, she's in a meeting in the evening. I get dinner or whatever. There's some guys, they're like frat boy businessmen types. And they're like, oh man, I can't believe we're in DC. This is so awesome. The White House is there. These guys got to be in their late 20s or something at least, or mid 20s. It seemed really weird to me. But then again, I grew up around here. So, seemed really weird that they were so excited. And then they were talking about how hot it was and it had been raining. It was very humid. And they were like, oh man, this is like Florida. It really is the swamp. And I'm like, no, dude, Florida is way worse than this, but it's still not fun. It's bad. But again, you guys can see this. Like, this is all of the urban sprawl, all this white part. This is literally houses upon houses upon houses. It is insane. It goes all the way up to Baltimore. There's Columbia, Maryland. And, we're also, all this is built up as well. And Annapolis. It's a crazy, crazy thing. And even out here toward Bel Air. Now, this gets more rural, but I've been in Bel Air many a times. And, you could see how all of this connects. It's quite strange. And all I could think of the entire time I was there is these people have no idea, one, how wealthy they have to be to live in these areas, because they really do. Even the poor people have to be wealthy. But aside from that, they have no idea how easily they could be cut off from the supply chain in the rural areas. There's no ability for them. There's no landmass for them to grow their own food. Now, I recall some years ago, I saw a thing, Discovery Channel or something like that, National Geographic, about a ancient Chinese city found in the jungle. And they hypothesized, and it's completely overgrown. Like, they didn't even know it was there. They stumbled upon it. But they hypothesized that these people grew their empire so large, their city so large, that they could no longer sustain it on the interior. That is, with farming and whatever else. There wasn't the land. They basically ended up starving themselves out because they centralized far too much. Centralization, folks, creates weakness. Well, hey, Yiz, how you doing? By the way, Yiz, since you're here, now my wife's due date is today, but who knows when she'll go into labor. But I am free now from birthing classes. If, I'm not asking to come on your show, but if you want to invite me onto the Dragons of Discord, I will be available. So just saying. Since we haven't talked in a little while. Yeah, Aragon says, Florida is way worse than humidity. It looks like you're showered in your clothes 10 minutes after you step outside. Yes, it's bad. And, I've lived... So I live down here in this area. I was stationed down here in St. Mary's, Lexington Park. There's a naval base there. That's what this thing is back here, and directly above my head. I got some awards and stuff while I was there, that kind of thing while I was in the military. But yeah, this is just crazy. And again, like this whole thing of Baltimore, this drive from DC to Baltimore is about a 20-30 minute drive with no traffic, like in the evening. But this is going to be a 2-3 hour drive, guys. It is absolutely insane with traffic. It's nuts. And then you have to go all the way out here up 270 to get past Gaithersburg before you start getting into rural lands again. And, and then there's Frederick, and then over Hagerstown where I grew up at, it's all very rural. And we get out here toward Cumberland, and you guys can see it's very, very sparse. But my whole point of all this was, it just is maddening to me that these folks think the way they do. They live this way. They have no conception of the realities of what's going on in their government. They just kind of fall in line, lockstep. And again, if things crash, if things fall like we have been seeing, they're not going to be prepared. They're going to be in a shock of their lifetimes. especially as the inflation goes up, gas prices go up, and whatever else. Let's see. You said, funny you should mention that. I have an invite for a planning stream tonight waiting in your Twitter DMs. Okay, well, as you know, I rarely check my Twitter, so I will be there. So anyways, guys, or I will check it, and I will see if I can be there, that is. Anyways. So yeah, this whole thing is really, really crazy to me, the way that this works. And I don't know, when I was young, I always wanted to be in the city. And today, I don't really care for it. I don't really care for it at all. And I think it's a maturity and wisdom that in my age, and of course, coming into maturity in my faith as well, that has probably led me there. So, anyways, I wanted to play a few videos for you guys today. This is from the Corbett Report Extras, because I think James's regular channel was taken down. But this is about the cyber pandemic stuff, the scandemic stuff. And I want to play just a little brief thing of this. I want to show you guys a few other things. The interview with Obama on CNN the other week. Now, I did not watch this full interview, but the ghost body lady, she covered it. It's really interesting, the things that Obama say. And then I called this the other day from the State Department, and this was absolutely disgusting. This was the State Department, that is of the the Biden administration. Might as well be the Obama administration. Might as well be George Bush's administration. I watched this, and they're literally talking about. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but as they're taking questions from the press, they're literally talking about trade deals in other nations, between other nations, and how the United States is basically involved with them. And I'm like, what business does the United States have in brokering deals? Now, I understand the idea of being a neutral party, but that's not what this is about. This is about the global government. What business do they have brokering deals for other nations? Because the nations that are creating trade deals between each other, well, they're trying to, get the best thing for their people. Why should the United States in any way, shape, or form dictate what is best for the people of foreign nations? It's an interesting thing to look into. So let's look at some of this cyber scandemic stuff real quick. And guys, as always, let me know if the volume is too loud or too quiet. Generally, I find when I rewatch any video I play tends to be louder than me. So we'll see.
Welcome back to New World Next Week. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato for MediaMonarchy.com. The plaintiff's interest in expressing his First Amendment speech outweigh the defendant's interest in restricting the same. We have got that good news story, plus prepping virtual flags for Cyber Polygon. But first, Japan shooting up everyone for the games no one wants. Japan mulls vaccinating all 70,000 Tokyo Games volunteers. Japan is considering, it's funny, even they're saying, again, James, it's so interesting the way things are framed. They're considering vaccinating as though the people have no say in it whatsoever. That's always like the dudes who'd be like, oh, yeah, I'd hook up with her. Like, yeah, like she'd hook up with you. Japan is considering vaccinating about 70,000 volunteers for the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics, while thousands of media members will be tracked by a global positioning system while they're under mandatory quarantine after entering the country to improve the safety of the major event amid the coronavirus pandemic, the officials have said just a couple days ago. They kind of bury that part from the headlines, James. The headline says Japan mulls vaccinating all 70,000 Tokyo Games volunteers. They don't say media to be tracked and traced while locked in hotels of our choosing.
And of course, Holly and I talked about this last Wednesday over the Ants Justify the Memes, because they're having this issue in Canada with people coming in and out. So the Olympics thing, I don't really care so much about. Let's see here. I watched this a few days ago, guys, so please forgive me for not remembering where to start this at. All right, let's see if we go here.
This point, and they're still working out all these details. It's insanity. I suppose, in a sense, that is the saving grace here, is that if you put the Japanese government in a wet paper bag and told them to get out of it, they'd organize a committee to talk about how to get out of the bag, and, I mean, it would take months for anyone to even think about punching their way out. So, that is, I guess, the saving grace here. I can imagine if these games were taking place in the US or in some other place that has a more of an organized and efficient way of imposing the boot on the face, this would be nightmarish. It still is potentially going to be nightmarish, but not as bad as it could have been. They could have used the games as the excuse. We're going to jab everyone in the country right away, and we're going to track every person, and they could have used it for the rollout of the martial law police state big style, but they haven't done that. So I guess that's a good thing. But
In the reasoning for that, they haven't done any official lockdowns or anything. They've only done suggestions. The reason for that is because people in Japan take politics more seriously than we do here. The politicians know that they'll be kicked out of office. Here, people are playing team sports. It's a D or an R, which is absolutely absurd. And it is primarily about power, not about the organization of the society, not about protecting people, not about the laws. That is, in the classically liberal sense, and as I read to you from Bastiat over the last couple of weeks, the laws of justice, of protecting your rights. Not about any of that. And our government's primary purpose anymore, of course, is to continue to expand the global governmental system, continue to make the U.S. a globalist trading zone and not a sovereign nation, continue to erode away our liberties.
But I think it's only because of lack of organization rather than lack of will. As I've continued to say, they're...
Aragon says, I fully support keeping track of quarantining members of the media forever. Yeah. Sam says, on the Vax thing, E3 Video Games Festival was all online this year, and they brought up a few times how helpful we can all get the vax soon. Or, yeah. Well, there is a point there. I had a meme as I do my regular meme mining about, we can get these vaccines passed out immediately, but, we can't get people food and other basic resources. Kind of goes to show you where people's priorities are. Of course, I'm a free marketeer. I don't believe in all this government control and pushing these things out, even in an emergency. Now, if this was what I would consider a true emergency, like people were just falling over left and right, if I knew more than one person who has passed away from this, and as far as I know, I don't, but I know hundreds of people that for certain have had the thing, maybe my tune would change a little bit that, okay, we need some action, but I think that the best thing the government could have done was suggest things and let people figure it out on their own. But this was never about that. It was all about elections. It was all about control. It was all about bringing in that great reset.
I still think that after the Olympics comes and goes and all of that's done, then they can get to work on really cracking down on the Japanese population. They've already started that. Since my last update several months ago, they've passed, for example, new legislation that allows the prefectural governments to set certain mandates on businesses when there is a state of emergency declared, like closing at 8 p.m. and that sort of thing, and enforce it with fines. So they have bracelets. I don't know. Who knows what form they're trying to.
When Japan isn't a leader in efficiency, it seems like we're all in giant trouble. Speaking of giant trouble, our second story on this New World Next Week, episode 450. We'll just do the thing, of course, that gets us kicked off of platforms, reading the press releases from the places. Cyber Polygon to focus on secure development of digital ecosystems. This comes from cyberpolygon.com. Cyber Polygon 2021, the international online cybersecurity event, is scheduled for the 9th of July this year. It will be dedicated to the secure development of digital ecosystems. The event is hosted by Zone, it might be pronounced, an expert in strategic management of digital risks, and is part of the SPER ecosystem, SBER. And of course, with support from the World Economic Forum Center for Cybersecurity and Interpol, unfortunately not the band. This is an annual event going way back to 2019. This is only the third one. They started this thing, I think that's the same year they did the Event 201. The key objective of Cyber Polygon is to enhance cybersecurity across all levels. It will traditionally feature two parallel tracks: an online conference for the general public and practical activities for security specialists. The conference will bring together speakers to discuss the key risks posed by digitalization and share best practices in developing secure ecosystems. Again, they like to use words for ecosystems that describe, the real world, nature, trees and air and things like that. Again, they steal the real and sell us back the fake. No, that's an ecosystem. You should go live your whole life in it. The participants of the technical training will practice their skills in mitigating a targeted supply chain attack. That sounds familiar. One of the new features to be introduced this year is the real-time updates for cybersecurity specialists who couldn't join the exercise, presumably because of the super scary disease killing millions. On the day of the event, recorded presentations from cybersecurity experts and the organizers' insight into the training scenarios will be posted to the cyberpolygon.com website. The materials will also be available after the event. Not sure if they'll have any cute plushies or not.
By the way, guys, I'll open another tab just real quick, just while I'm thinking about it. The Corbett report had a good video. Right here it is. It's like an hour or so long, though. The other day, right, Meet the World Economic Forum. If you guys want to check out what the World Economic Forum is and you want to go a little deeper on it and how far it goes back, and Klaus Schwab and his ties, and I think they talk about his wife and some other stuff, some of the funding that's there. It's really, really interesting, at least for me. But I'm not going to cover that today. I just thought that this again, I watched this several days ago, so I'm sorry I didn't start at the right place. But thought this was a good summation that we could talk about, and I want to show you a couple other videos. Tomorrow I'll get back to, a lot more reading and the predictions from the past. I still do have the politics of obedience set up here, so we'll get back to that tomorrow, though.
The key message voiced by experts at the World Economic Forum and other international platforms is that supply chain security is to become a major cybersecurity issue in 2021. The ever-expanding, digitalization tightens the interconnectivity between people, devices, companies, and countries, and of course the differences between those things seemingly erased. Thus, the resilience of an entire system depends on the ability of each link within a chain to withstand threats of various grades. James, generally in the past, in crazy conspiracy alternative media, I've basically said any drill we knew about in advance probably was always nothing.
I saw, as you said, it sounds like he's from rural Virginia or West Virginia. He's got a West Virginia shirt on. So I don't know where he's from. I know he does this collaboration with the Corbett Report. It's Media Monarch is his website. So if you go there, you can find all the cool conspiracies. The conspiracy!
It's the drills we didn't know about, like 7/7 and 9/11 and those events that turn out to be big things that smack us in the face. In the past, I would have said that, but now it just, again, seems like it is full tilt boogie.
Yeah, exactly right. All bets are off the table, and we can't necessarily use the past couple of decades as a guide for what's coming in the next several years. But yes, I mean, we do not need to elaborate to this audience, surely, that this is already part of the news cycle, and we have been prepped for this story for decades, really, but really for the last several months. I mean, SolarWinds, Colonial Pipeline, JBS, and now there's, outages of various sites that take place, and the first thing that people think is, oh, is this a cyber attack? We are definitely being prepped and primed for this, and Cyber Polygon is an important part of that. Just the the fact that that's taking place and that it gets news attention and that it's being touted and pimped by the World Economic Forum and other.
So what James is talking about here, being prepped for it, being primed for it is intentionally put out in the media so that you guys just accept it as the new normal. This is how these things work. And people just, like little sheep, just follow along. They're like, oh, I don't question this. They don't think, isn't it a little weird that back in February, I think it was, they had Cyber Polygon, and I really kicked myself because I meant to cover it and I like shoved it under the rug to cover something else or talk about something else, and I wish I had because the cyber attack started and I was aware of this already, but hopefully you guys are savvy enough to know that they did this whole Cyber Polygon thing. But the point is that this gets in the media, and then so first before it was Russian hackers, an election, right? So we have to start expecting that. And now it's attacks on the supply chain. But none of this is really about that either. Just like I covered with the housing market the other week and how BlackRock is buying up so many neighborhoods. And then the Federal Reserve basically owns about 30% of the U.S.'s mortgage. They've backed those things. We'll talk about this a lot, hopefully, on Wednesday on the Unjustify the Memes. So just understand that this is to prime people, to give them that little bit of propaganda, to make them think, oh, this is what's going on. And behind the scenes, it's very likely that, you know, these are actors that are not just rando people. They're probably colluding, as the word goes, conspiring with these folks. So I don't know. It's hard to say. It's all speculation, of course. But the reality is, as he is saying here, they do prep us. And people watch the legacy media and they don't think, they just turn off their brains. This is the majority of folks. This is also the part of my disgust of being in DC the other day for a night and an afternoon. Again, like like downtown, the monuments, whatever. DC is actually a really beautiful city, but it's something about feeling trapped in that area. There's something about it. And yes says, what's the guy's name? Something Monarch? Yeah, Media Monarchs. Yep. All right.
Other obvious agenda setters at the moment. Let us not forget it was Cyber Polygon 2020 that gave us Galactic Emperor Schwab proclaiming from his perch, his Bond villainesque perch, that the COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber attack. I mean, we know exactly what they are preparing. They've even put the terminology out there, cyber pandemic. And now, what are they specifically looking at? Cyber attacks on the supply chain, exactly as has just emerged in the news in the past couple of weeks, just as they're planning this. So, yes, I am not sitting here saying that on June 9th is when some big cyber attack is going to take place under the cover of this drill. I mean, maybe, as you say, all bets are off the table, maybe, but that seems a bit cartoonish. But the implications of this sort of event are numerous and deep, one of which I will continue to point out because it is ridiculous and hilarious that the thing that you will never see in any mention of this in any mainstream source is that, of course, this whole event is organized under the auspices of Sberbank, one of the biggest banks in Russia. And specifically their cybersecurity unit is doing this. Again, the Russian hacking hysteria of the past half decade, and this major cyber security event being hosted by the dastardly Russians. And you don't hear a peep about it. It was the Russian prime minister that opened the proceedings in last year's Cyber Polygon. So, I mean, there's some weird things that go on with that, which could...
Now, in case you guys didn't catch that, the Russian prime minister opened Cyber Polygon last year. And of course, it's always the Russian bot hacking farms that are the root of all the evils of these things. Quite funny. And the reality is, guys, I've covered this before in the past too. The majority of interference or hacking comes straight out of China. It literally does. They have seen the numbers released from Facebook or other groups of different bot farms. It is ridiculous. I think there might be like a couple hundred or something that were found in Russia, and there were hundreds of thousands in China. And Iran too. Iran has quite a bit, but I'm not really concerned with Iran. Like that's being worried about Iran is just ridiculous in my mind. But I know, we have to keep up this idea that if they get nuclear weapons, they're going to blow up. They're going to blow up Israel and the Israelis. What are they going to do? It's not going to happen. No one's going to send the entire world into, a nuclear holocaust. It's not going to happen. Even the few times that it almost happened in the past, which it did, people were smart enough not to have it happen. In fact, in Russia, there was I believe a general or something who called off a nuclear strike because they had a false alert, and he decided that he would allow it to, if it was real, he was just going to allow it to happen because he was not about to consign the entire human race to destruction. So it's all that stuff, nuclear war, nuclear arms race, restricting nations from having this. People go, well, don't you think that North Korea will attack this or that if they have nuclear missiles? Well, why don't they attack them with regular missiles? Why don't they attack them with just regular plain old missiles? If Iran had a nuclear warhead and launched it into Israel, all of Europe and the United States would turn Iran into a giant glass bead. I can promise you. Never say never. Well, that's true, but I just don't think so. I also, as though, I'm a Christian, so I don't see those things happening because, to my mind, the world gets to this certain place of this one world government, and everyone worships it, and then Christ returns. So, which is kind of scary because it seems to be about where we're at in the timeline.
One imagines how this could play out. For example, what if Sparebank was using all the information it's learning about these cybersecurity specialists and teams and their weaknesses and vulnerabilities and how best to hack people, and using that to create a cyber attack that's then going to launch, cyber World War III or whatever form this takes. Again, you can imagine the narratives that are already underway, and I'm sure they have a lot of different cards they could pull out of their sleeve if and when they need to. But that's just one way that this feeds in. And I think the most important part of this, of course, is that this continues to be, and is increasingly so, part of the narrative. As we are placed into the digital world, cyber threats are going to be dangled in front of our face in the exact same way the turban boogeyman was dangled in front of our face for the past couple of decades. Here's the new threat, and you guys better be prepared for it because it is coming. And when it comes, you better believe it's going to be the cover for a whole host of sins. Economic collapse, whatever is coming. Oh, it was a cyber attack. And it was the Russians. Oh, I knew it. Oh, now it's time for war. Again, I think we need to be prepared for this narrative so that we are inoculated against it, to use that phrase, before it happens.
James, you mistakenly said June 9th. Cyber Polygon begins on July 9th. Luckily, we've made it through June 9th, I think, since that is today, as we're coming to you with New World Next Week, episode 450. James, you almost remind me, it's basically this sort of, learning the information to use against the others. It's basically like using chess players' moves against each other, like we learned, of course, from Darren Brown years ago and our buddy Richard Grove. Interesting thing, too, about all of these hacks, they all have a nature, name, and theme to them. Solar winds and pipelines and meats. It's not hacks about, Twitter and Fedbook. When they told me there was a hack, my first reaction was, somebody started the exercise early.
So I'm going to let this play some more, but that is important too, guys. What is it? It's all the environmental things, is it not? It's all of the big globalist UN-style plans and some of the environmental things. It's really interesting because I saw a meme that was fact-checked about these people. I'm going to pull it up because on my phone. Hopefully, I'll be able to show it to you guys on camera. But let's see here. Well, I don't know about the meme itself, but there is a... let me switch my camera over real quick. there is this circle, right, that looks kind of like a rainbow. I don't know how well this is showing up in the different colors there, but there were a bunch of people within the World Economic Forum and leaders, certain leaders of power, who were wearing this pin. This was taken from Instagram. So you have Bill Gates there. What is that? Macron. The black guy is the guy who's in charge of the something. Is he part of the? Is he the World Health Organization? I think he's the president of, or whatever. And of course Boris Johnson. And they're all wearing this pen, and I have this little thing on here because I got this from Instagram. It says, "See why fact checkers say this is false." And then, of course, I don't generally fact check memes, but this is no joke. This is Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. They put it on there. Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. This is a little pin saying, "Hey, this is our little club," and it's always about environmentalism. They make it about environmentalism because they're Malthusians, and that's if you go watch James Corbett's big long video on the World Economic Forum, he gets into that. So let's let this last little part play, and then I have a few other things I want to show you.
World Economic Forum partner JBS Meats coincidentally hit with ransomware attack. That's been one of the latest hack attacks. And some of the other ones, James, the cops already got all that crypto back from the Colonial PSYOP. U.S. recovered millions in ransom from Colonial Pipeline hackers, but crypto's still totally our savior, right? As long as the power's still on, I guess. And remember, on the Colonial Pipeline story, share it with your last friend standing. The Colonial Pipeline was fine. Its owners admit they shut down the spigots because they weren't sure how they were going to get paid properly. Colonial Pipeline was fine. Its owner shut it down to make sure they'd get paid correctly. Hey, speaking of sharing information, my Alexa friend disabled the Amazon Sidewalk mesh thing we talked about last week just in time. I think he probably had hours to spare. So there is good news. There are ways we're winning. James, even when I typed that in the show notes prepping this, it was like, oh man, we haven't said ways we're winning in a long time. And for our last New World Next Week segment before a little summer break, we've got a few more positive developments, a sort of good news roundup for Story 3 here on New World Next Week. Judge orders Virginia school to reinstate teacher who refused to use the trans pronouns.
Winning bigly, folks, winning bigly. I'm not going to continue with the video because I don't really care about this so much. I mean, it's important, but I want to talk about specifically about these cyber pandemics, the pandemic, the one world government. Like I said, we're going to do a little bit different thing today, little conspiracy theory stuff. But yes, the Media Monarch dude did have a shirt on that said locally grown, and it was West Virginia. So maybe I should reach out to him. Maybe we can collaborate. That'd be pretty cool. I'd definitely like to have a conversation with James Corbett because he seems to be quite well informed and been at this for a very long time. And even though Alex Jones may have been right about many things, James is not hyperbolic like Alex is. So this is the Sparse document. This is from What's Her Face. I absolutely love her channel. I'd love to have her on our show as well, but I don't know how to get a hold of her. I can't find any contact information for her, which is unfortunate. Maybe I can message her if I, do a little donation to her Subscribe Star or whatever. But in any case, let's watch this.
Take a look at this. This is a document published in 2017 called The Sparse Pandemic, 2025 to 2028. A futuristic scenario for public health risk communicators. It's a quote-unquote hypothetical scenario designed to illustrate the public health risk communication challenges that could potentially emerge during an infectious disease outbreak. It begins with the disclaimer that the infectious pathogen, medical countermeasures, characters, news media excerpts, social media posts, and government agency responses described within are entirely fictional. But in the year 2021, the contents of this 86-page document look more like a gruesome snapshot of our current reality than any hypothetical fictional scenario. This document predicts that at first we will be eased into the pandemic with very simple mitigation strategies, like washing your hands and practicing good hygiene. But that over the course of 3 years, those simple mitigation strategies will slowly escalate to, get this, a mass experimental vaccination program. And the purpose of this document is to mull over effective communication strategies for dealing with the public when they become aware that this vaccine has no long-term safety data and that, and this is in their own words, it might potentially be causing more harm than good. This is straight out of the document. What are the potential consequences of health officials over-reassuring the public about the potential risks of a novel SPARS vaccine when long-term effects are not yet known? Long-term effects that are not yet known. That's weird. I heard from a professional student that long-term side effects don't exist for vaccines. Hang tight, because it gets even more infuriating. Communities around the country went through what some felt was a harrowing public health emergency, only later to confront the possibility, however slim, that the medicine we promised would help them may in fact be hurting them. Summary reports indicated that a significant number of helpline users said that their principal worry was associated with the SPARS pandemic and more recently, uncertainty about the potential long-term side effects of Coravax. Considering this new knowledge, Dr. Flynn countered the earlier claim that the public simply needed to wait until the science was clear. I urge you to take a look at this document for yourself. You might be pretty shocked by the parallels. It focuses on details such as how to deal with the public when they viewed graphic images of children being harmed by their medical concoctions. It covers the neurological side effects that will be caused by the vaccine. It even covers very specific details such as the Black community's hesitance to take the hypothetical vaccine, and more specifically, how to win back the Black community's trust in the CDC, even though the CDC funded the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Here's a little hypothetical tweet they've included of a rapper pandering to the Black community. When I said yesterday that I was proud of the Black community's contribution to the Tuskegee research, I meant that I was proud of how they remained strong in the face of adversity. I am saddened by the injustice and suffering they experienced. But I still strongly support the CDC and FDA's recommendations to take Calosivir and Coravax. Sound familiar?
I got the vaccine, you got the vaccine, they got the vaccine, we got the vaccine. We can get back to normal, let me inform you, let's all get the vaccine.
Now, believe it or
Cringe. Like, is that to appeal to the inner city Black folks to get the vaccine? That's absolutely insane.
not, the end of this document is even more shocking than the casual minimization of 40 plus years of human suffering. It ends by mulling over whether the hypothetical president of the hypothetical pandemic world should address the millions of people who sacrificed themselves to this experimental vaccination. It reads, President Archer agreed to address the country's resolve and recovery in the face of SPARS. Top risk communication advisors from the CDC, FDA, NIH, and SAMHSA conferred as a group about how best to frame the president's remarks. The group vigorously debated whether it was appropriate for the president to acknowledge the sacrifice that vaccine recipients had made on behalf of their communities or to console them in their grief over that sacrifice. That's right, my friends. Back in 2017, your trusted health experts predicted that there would be a pandemic, that pandemic would result in the rollout of a mass inoculation program, and that inoculation program would inevitably lead to the death and injury of millions of people. What do you think will happen to people like us who didn't get the jab when those people start finding out they may...
So guys, like I said, What's Her Face, absolutely great channel. Go check her out. If you are not subscribed to her, I suggest that you do. It's crazy, right? It's crazy that these things come up. I often talk about the UK series. There was an Amazon reboot that was terrible. I haven't watched it, but I saw some clips and I watched several reviews of it. And it was terrible. But, you know, I saw this, the UK show Utopia a while back. And, you know, truth is stranger than fiction. But, boy, I'll tell you what. That show is like almost 100% on point with all of this. And now, the agenda in the show is quite different. In that it is it is meant to basically the vax that is meant to depopulate the society. Now, if that's the agenda or not, you know, that's a whole nother thing. I'm not trying to say that that is the agenda, but you can find it over on YouTube. In fact, I'm going to bring this up real quick, just so you can see here, because I have the whole thing ripped. There are 2 seasons. It's visually pretty good. I think it's 6 episodes a season, about an hour long. I'm not saying the show's going to blow your mind or anything, but it is visually incredible. It was very well shot. So from an artistic standpoint, and it talks about basically like a megalomaniac wanting to depopulate the earth. You know, we've all seen Kingsman, right? Similar thing. This is always the answer. And these people think that they're good for doing so. Going sane in a crazy world. Huang Cholo. So another one here to check out. I'm not going to actually play this because Salty Cracker, if you guys don't know the channel, does good work. But he believed that this was a little bit too much for YouTube. So I'm going to respect those same wishes of his good advisement. But essentially, they found out that there were, despite all of the arguments, that there were, in fact, bats in the Wuhan lab. There were plenty of bats. So it's just something to go check out on your own if you want. But yeah, everything's been a lie. Now, most of us know this. I know some people are still waking up, and there's a lot of people that need to be woke up, folks. A lot of people. We are small in number, those who are aware. It may seem like that there are a lot of folks who are aware when you talk with them, or when you talk with certain people, but it is only because that you tend to find yourself in similar circles, right? This is what we do as human beings. So, but when you start getting into things, you talk to a lot of people, they have no clue. And a lot of people just follow the MSNs, right? It is how it goes. So, another video I want to show you guys, and I know I'm normally reading and talking a lot more. Today, like I said, I'm just kind of going to have a different kind of show. There's a lot of information I want to cover, a lot of things on my mind, and things that I had seen in the past week or so. I couldn't stream for, several days. I could have probably Saturday or Sunday, but I don't usually do that on the weekend. I'd like to make my weekends, relaxing and housework and whatever else. Things I haven't gotten done throughout the week. But this is another great YouTube channel if you're not aware of it. It's Atrocity Guide. And this lady here puts together these interesting documentaries on all kinds of things. And she's got a quite pleasant voice and goes into these rabbit holes of interesting factoids of history. And a lot of it is internet centered. But this was really interesting to me because this is going to segue into the Obama thing that told you I want to talk about, or the State Department, and then also into the whole Libertarian Party in New Hampshire and that whole ordeal right now, which is absolutely absurd. And it shows you that that individual who was the chair or whatever she was of the Libertarian Party doesn't care about liberal, that is classical liberal values, that is values of freedom. What she cares about is her power. And the Libertarian Party is It's broken, guys. But right now there's the Mises caucus going on that is trying to reform it. And that's more of a Ron Paul style libertarianism, not this libertarian stuff. Like when I had Adam Kolkesh on the Ends Justify the Memes, where the show was just, it was weird. It was very weird. In fact, Tank, I think, believed afterwards, told me, he said, well, gee, I wish I had everything figured out. The answer is libertarianism. And then later on, like a week or so later, and again, I'm not trying to talk trash about Adam, because Adam is an important figure that did a lot of important things. But I just think he's not in the right headspace. But yeah, then I watched a whole video of his, a week or two later, with him arguing about people and the whole LGBT thing and, super straight, and arguing against it. The idea of super straight. And it's like, what are you talking about? Well, it might be offensive and hurt people's feelings. Sorry, guy. You're gonna be offensive and hurt people's feelings in life. You have no control over that. I mean, you do as far as how you speak and how you present yourself. But man, walking on eggshells around somebody to not offend them, that's actually tyranny on their part, because they will tear you apart if you say the wrong thing. It's nutty. And we cannot operate a healthy society this way. The whole point, I say this like every time I make a stream, right? But the whole point of the channel, my whole thing is to talk about what makes strong societies. How do we keep them? How do we maintain them? Well, centralization ain't it. And cowtailing to people's feelings ain't it either. We have to be stronger than this. We have to be better. And unfortunately, we've infantilized everyone. We've infantilized every single person and allowed mommy and daddy government to come in. The whole part of the urban sprawl I was talking about earlier, and these people, they don't know. They have no clue how to survive if something bad were to happen to them, right? If the supply chain would break down. You think that those people in the cities will not attack and kill each other when things get really bad? Go read about the siege of Jerusalem. Now, this has actually happened many a times throughout history, but it always comes to mind to me because of how horrible it was. That during the siege of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple in AD 70, people were eating each other. They were hunting down people's babies to eat them. This is the reality of human beings when they get desperate. I mentioned, I think over in the Ends Justify the Memes last week, that I wasn't concerned about the COOF when things were locking down. I was concerned about the supply chains and people getting crazy. And aside from the race riots, we didn't have a lot of craziness. But it will happen, guys. It will happen when food gets so expensive, when people can't pay for their gas, whatever else is going on. What we are seeing right now is a restriction of everything. And the whole idea of the Great Reset, that you will own nothing and you'll be happy, is that you will be a permanent renter. You will permanently lease things from people, including your rights, by the way. I mean, we sort of do that now with basic things like, motor vehicles and traveling. We kind of lease those things from the government because they create licensing and registration and all of those things. And excuse me, guys. Perhaps you might think, well, but Bill, without those things, that we would just have crazy drivers and da-da-da. Dude, we have crazy drivers now. Go drive in DC, please. We have crazy drivers all over the place. I grew up, between West Virginia. I grew up in Maryland, between West Virginia and Pennsylvania. And I don't know anyone in Pennsylvania that knows how to drive, apparently, because every time I go into Pennsylvania, they drive like idiots. I don't know. At least in that rural part of Pennsylvania. So I get the arguments for licensing and all this other stuff. But look, guys, it's a fundamental right of yours to just buy property, own it, and use it. The end. You can say, well, but these are public roads and highways, and therefore they have to be policed. Well, sure. But why does the government get to dictate, like, the the safety standards of my vehicle or how fast I get to drive. Now, I kind of get speed limits in, neighborhoods, but why do they dictate, emissions standards? Here in West Virginia, I have to do a safety inspection every year. It's like $12. It's nothing big, but every year, got to get it inspected. I have to pay personal property tax on it, on my vehicles, in order to maintain registration. Of course, you have to have insurance as well, all these things. And again, I get it. I get the moral risk. But I don't even know where I started with this. I think, I know what I was saying. The larger point is that they are basically leasing us our rights. That's what they want to do. When you don't own property, folks, that makes you a slave. There is only one class of people throughout history who did not have property rights, and that has always been slaves, the serfs. The serfs is a step removed from slaves because in serfdom, at least, you owned your land, technically. So, but we don't even own our land or our houses. Now, we can talk about mortgages and all, but the reality is if you don't pay your property tax, the government will come and take your house from you. I can promise you. It's a very, very disgusting, evil world and system we live in. And these folks with the Great Reset, this is what they're doing. They're trying to break up these supply chains to get you to be reliant on them so that if you do not comply, you do not do as they wish, you do not think the way that they want, they will cut you off. And of course, that is the biblical notion of the mark of the beast. It's right in there. And it's very clear. I will go through, I talked about the other week, a whole thing on Revelations. It's not as hard to understand as people make it out to be. And I think there's just way too much nonsense around it. It explains itself, or other things in the Bible explain it pretty easily. But the bottom line is that it's talking about a worldly government, right? A worldly economy and a worldly religion. And the number 6 is the number of man. It can be translated as a man in Greek, but it is actually literally anthropos, where we get the word anthropology, right? That is man or humankind. Man was made on the 6th day. So these are the things of men. I don't think it's it's sort of a particular individual, but sort of. But it's more about the system. And this is just the reality, guys. This is the system that we live in today. I don't know any modern industrialized nation that is actually a really free nation. There are probably some, but they just don't exist anymore. We work in a global economy. We work in this global system, and these people behind the scenes who think that they know better dictate how it's going to go, and they control the things, all the supply lines. They work with all the corporations, and so they can do however they please. It's quite sad. In any case, I want to play this video. By the way, guys, I will not play the whole video once again. It is 45 minutes long. We're not going to do all that. And before I get too far ahead of myself, I just want to remind everyone that there is an Entropy stream and a DLive, if you guys prefer those, versus YouTube. Also, if you want to donate, you can do that there. There is should be a Subscribe Star linked in the in the description as well. If you guys want to help support me and my family, especially as we have been doing a lot of spending because we have a baby coming. So please do that if you are so inclined, or you can. But again, I will be all right if you don't. More importantly, help me grow the channel. Help me get my subs up. Help get the word out. I'm a big picture guy. I'm not usually in the minutia of things, so I tend to present a broad perspective and try to boil things down to first principles. I think that we get too lost into minutia, but this is what I do. So if you think what I do is good, if it's useful, then shill me out. Please help the channel grow. So anyways, let's get into this.
In the summer of 1965, inside a multi-story house on the coast of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Dr. John C. Lilly, neurophysiologist, inventor, psychonaut, and self-described consciousness pioneer, prepared the setting for his most ambitious experiment yet. The house had been partially flooded. Ramps were installed at either end so that the tide from the Caribbean Sea would continuously push new water in while washing old water out. Margaret Howe, the only human resident of the house, who had cut her hair short in anticipation of living in seawater for the next 10 weeks, bordered her makeshift bed with a shower curtain to keep dry while she slept. Peter, a 6-year-old dolphin and the house's only other occupant, would also have an area all to himself, a deep-water pool adjacent to the sea. And every day the two would meet in the middle, in a space flooded to Margaret's shins where they would attempt to accomplish the experiment's impossible objective.
Today is August 18. This is the morning lesson with Peter. Hello.
The dolphin must learn how to physically say the words Dr. Lilly had instructed, and he must learn the meaning of what he is saying.
A-E-I-O.
Margaret's job was to teach Peter English just like a mother would a child. She would use toys, food rewards, and whatever unconventional methods she could devise to get through to him. Dr. Lilly, who'd agreed not to interfere, would be floating in the darkness of his sensory deprivation tank above them, assisting Margaret not physically but telepathically. Outside of the house, NASA, the United States military, and the rest of the world waited for Margaret Howe and Dr. Lilly to become the first in history to bridge the interspecies communication gap, an achievement of cosmic significance. But
So you guys might think, why, Bill, what in the world are you doing bringing this up? Well, I watched this just the other day. But I'm bringing it up because this guy, John C. Lilly, was trying to communicate with dolphins and trying to teach dolphins the English language. And in the process of doing this, he started the whole sensory deprivation tank thing, which is very big today, to get into altered states. And then he was very big into the LSDs and all that good stuff. Later on, taking many trips on K, that is ketamine. And some really weird stuff happened. Like there was sort of sexual encounters with this male dolphin, Peter, and the woman trying to teach it English. This guy, John C. Lilly, was involved with governmental things and people who were high up and in power. Now, all of this, if you watch this full video, guys, is it's pretty weird. And it also is an indication of the people who run things in our world today, like Klaus Schwab being pretty weird when he dresses up as, whatever it is that his black robes that he wears. Yes says, wow. Oh, Val, you've seen this before? Well, good. By the way, I meant to say hi. I did say hi in the chat, but appreciate you being here, as always. Yeah. Quite interesting. So I'll probably let this play a little bit and skip through to some stuff. But this whole thing's nutty.
few knew who John C. Lilly really was, or who he would be by the end.
Yeah, I'm a student of the unexpected.
By the way, guys, if you like weird factoids of history, Atrocity God is a great channel to follow.
Right angle. Oh, nice, Peter.
Margaret knew that 10 weeks alone with a dolphin, wading through seawater, attempting to coax English from it would be taxing. Earlier that spring, she tested the limits of her own tolerance by completing a week-long trial run. Margaret found the living conditions inside the partially flooded house Dr. Lilly had renovated from his laboratory far from ideal for either human or dolphin. I slept usually in daytime clothes, wet, Margaret wrote of the trial period. In a bed that was wet.
Not so worried about this beginning portion here. Let's see. Here we go.
down before it began to resemble the vague approximation of speech. Bottlenose dolphins appear to recognize the rhythm and inflections of a complete sentence.
I am a good boy. Yes, you certainly are.
Lily began to wonder if we had mistaken the cetaceans' lack of engineering or reluctance to dominate their environment the way humans had for intellectual inferiority. We are severely handicapped in our efforts to measure the intelligence of individuals of other species than our own, Lily argued. We use inappropriate yardsticks derived from our own history as primates with hands and legs. Language, Lily hypothesized, was a more accurate measure of intelligence. And if he could demonstrate the cetaceans had the capacity for it, not only would it alter humanity's perception of our own supremacy, we could join these creatures in intellectual teamwork, teaching one another what we knew of the world and the nature of existence.
Now, guys, dolphins have very large brains, and they are obviously highly intelligent animals. I don't think in any way, shape, or form they're anything compared to human beings and the complexity of what a human being is. But this is the progressive type thinking, progressive type science that is so inundated into our world and our thinking. Excuse me, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know why I have a bit of a phlegmy throat today. The weather is very nice. Usually this happens when the weather's not the best, but so I don't mean to hack into the mic for you. But in any case, like the thought that one species could speak to another is compelling. It's interesting, but why would you assume that it's even possible for them to process in that way? Why wouldn't you assume that they process in a different way? We actually know now that they do. There are various scientists who are studying dolphin communications, of course. So, yes, humans are also highly intelligent animals, Yes says. Well, if you consider us an animal, now I do to some degree, but I think that, of course, we are different. But, again, that's a religious argument.
And not being one to doubt his own intuition, Lily was prepared to gamble it all on his ability to prove it, despite having no idea how.
We are going to speak English yet, Peter?
As additional preparation for the live-in experiment with the dolphin, Dr. Lily had asked Margaret to read Planet of the Apes by Pierre Boulle and report her thoughts. Why must there be a dominance and a subordination, Margaret wrote of the novel? Why must man take over, or why must the apes take over? Dr. Lily shared her...
This is like fifth grade, not even that. This is like 5-year-old thinking. Why do we need money in the world? Why can't everyone just have stuff? Why can't we just trade? Of course, I've had adults tell me this too, which is sad. Why can't we all just... if you have something and I need it, and I have something that you need, why can't we just trade? Why do we need money? Money's how they control us. No. Money is just a means of exchange that makes it more streamlined. That's all that money is in the end. And it's just what we do, guys. It is what we do. So, he says, I don't want to argue with you. I can believe in souls and magic and stuff. Well, animals have souls and spirits and whatever else according to the biblical scriptures, right? But it's different. It's a matter of us being being creators and being the kings of the earth, if you would. I just find a ton in my studies over the years, a ton of flaws and holes through evolutionary theory. And I believe in adaptation, absolutely. But I don't know. We have no example that I'm aware of species changing to other species. Now, we can take a bunch of bones and put them together and say, well, this is one transition to another. But that's kind of wonky, especially if you start studying homology and how that works, because it's based on circular logic. And a lot of people have had this criticism of a lot of very intelligent people, very smart, super genius people of evolution. It has no mathematical component that is plausible. chemically, we don't know how it would work. So there's a bunch of illusions there. Now, when I talk about body and soul and spirit, I try and frame them in modern terminology. So, your soul is like your essence and your personality of who you are, and your spirit's something like your attitude. It's not that hard to understand. I think what we do is we, think of the giant spaghetti monster as modern human beings living in the sky or whatever, the old man in the sky. And that's a false conceptualization, a more modern conceptualization than ancient people would have had. And so, again, like, whether you believe or not, that's up to you. I'm not here to proselytize to you. But I will talk about my perceptions of things. So, of course, things like angels and all, I say, the best way to talk about it is interdimensional type beings. So people who are modern minded will think about interdimensional beings or aliens or whatever else, and that's perfectly fine. But the concept of angels is not. And then they'll go, well, then you have the ancient aliens people. Well, it was actually aliens that did all this stuff. They set this all up. Okay, fine. I mean, yeah, the spiritual hosts, the Elohim from the Bible, not the Elohim, the God of gods, but the Elohim, the class of spiritual beings or disembodied beings or whatever they are, interdimensional beings, however we want to put that. That isn't, they are aliens. That isn't something natural to this earth per se. So again, conceptualizing things is important when we talk about this stuff. And I always say, even if you don't believe, the metaphors are important. And they are. They are, because more than anything, the Bible tells us about human psychology and human nature. It tells us how we act, and it's a roadmap or a guide to some degree, to how the history of the world will play out. There's a lot of ways to describe what the Bible is, but those are just some. So, in any case.
Sentiment. Among the other intelligent life on the planet, humans likely had a reputation for cruelty and imposing their will at any cost. If interspecies communication was possible, with both parties expending effort to accomplish it, the cetaceans might need convincing.
Fast forward a little bit here.
Margaret's initial idea was to occasionally punctuate their lessons with day-long periods inside the tanks of Pam and Sissy, the two female dolphins kept on the premises. Another thought I had on the subject, Margaret wrote in her journal, is whether or not it would be best for the human to somehow find a way to satisfy the dolphin's sexual needs without another dolphin. This may strengthen the bond between the dolphin and the human. Outside of St. Thomas, Lilly's claims of dolphin intelligence and language capabilities began to gain traction. His first book, Man and Dolphin, which he'd confided to colleagues that he'd written in a single weekend while high on amphetamines, was becoming a hit. It confronted its readers in the opening paragraph with the following prediction. Within the next decade or two, the human species will establish communication with another species. Non-human, alien, possibly extraterrestrial, more probably marine, but definitely highly intelligent, perhaps even intellectual. Popular culture was responding to his claims with comics, movies, television shows.
They call him Flipper, Flipper, faster than lightning.
The world was embracing the idea that certain animals were smarter than previously believed. Although Lilly had severed his military ties, the United States Navy was conducting their own experiments in deciphering Delphinese.
These two dolphins are calling to each other. We can hear them, but we don't know what they mean, yet. The United States Navy intends to find out.
The Navy's Marine Mammal Program began their research in tandem with Lilly, hoping to discover what the dolphin's newfound intelligence could do for them.
With its fine sonar and ability to plunge to the depths, it could be trained to locate underwater objects, to guard harbors against enemy swimmers and submarines, and to assist in various kinds of underwater operations.
Lilly rejected what he now saw as an exploitation of species he believed to be on a similar cognitive footing as humans. We are not dealing with small-brained animals in short-term experiments, he argued. And although he was guilty of it in the past, he now realized that keeping dolphins in such strict confinement was a breach of trust and goodwill. Lilly felt his Dolphin Point laboratory was more humane, as it was accommodating to both species and a prototype for facilities Lilly envisioned would be built all over the world's coast, where humans and dolphins could, quote, meet on a more equal footing, free to come and go. To talk and make sense with the dolphins, we must meet them at least halfway in their own element, Lilly wrote. In the seawater, we will communicate. We must learn to live wetly. And despite the hurdles ahead, Margaret was pleased with the progress she was making, even beginning to imagine future sessions in the Dolphin House stretching years or even decades. I now am no longer thinking in terms of 3 months, she wrote. I think in terms of forever. But as she began dealing with Peter's sexual urges herself, using her hands and feet and documenting her methods in a diary that would later be published, she seemed unable to predict the scandal that would unfold as a result. To her, it was a clinical solution to the distraction that plagued their lessons and an opportunity to bond with Peter. Both of these things, Margaret reasoned, were in service to their goal of interspecies communication. Dr. Lilly had meanwhile become preoccupied with the recesses of his own consciousness, going longer and longer in sensory deprivation. Referring to his own mind, Lilly wrote, "It seems to contain or be part of some large inner universes beyond my present understanding." And in an effort to go deeper, Lilly turned to a substance that was becoming the center of scientific interest across the United States.
This is a glass of water, colorless, tasteless. It contains 100 gamma of LSD-25.
Lysergic acid diethylamide, commonly called acid or LSD, is an intense hallucinogenic substance originally marketed as a cure for various psychological conditions. Although it had been around for nearly 2 decades, the 1960s saw the beginning of its widespread medicinal use.
Everything is in color, and I can feel the air. I can see it. I can see all the molecules.
Against the advice of his colleagues, Lilly would take it alone, closing.
That's generally the initial response to anyone who takes a hallucinogen. You know, supposedly parts of your brain are speaking to each other, so that don't normally. So you're going to perceive things very differently. I would say you can achieve similar states through prayer and other things, spiritual meditations, that is. So, but yeah, this is really important because this, you know, I'm not dissing any of this stuff. I don't care. You go experiment with it. In fact, I met I think it was the CEO of MAPS some years ago, 2-3 years ago now. And, you know, if you don't know, they work with psychedelics to help mitigate things like PTSD. And there's a lot of interesting stuff on microdosing and whatever else. So just as an aside there, I would say biblically, I think it depends on how you use those things. If you're trying to contact other worldly beings, you know, like in a DMT style trip, that would be probably considered witchcraft, I would say, or pharmakeia, which is the Greek word, where we get the word pharmacy from. But that doesn't mean that you should be, like Christians believing in being anti-medicine. That's stupid. You know, I know there's sects. It says right in the Bible, talks about medicine plenty of times. So, again, I think the purpose and intent's a very important thing. And then also, when we get into these things with this and these trips, and you get into the occult side of things, which I actually have a thing here, The Externalization of the Hierarchy by Alice A. Bailey, by Lucius Trust, by the way. That used to be Lucifer Publishing Company, I believe, Lucifer Trust, and they changed it to Lucius Trust. Of course, the first line here is, "Let the forces of light bring illumination to mankind. Let the spirit of peace be spread abroad." Well, that forces of light bringing illumination to mankind is Lucifer, because what they do is they take a modern Gnostic approach and say that the Garden of Eden was a place that was a trap for mankind, and that Lucifer which is a mistranslation. Lucifer isn't even a name. It just means a bearer of light. But Lucifer comes and gives humankind knowledge and saves them from the evil god Jehovah, who wanted them to be stupid. And this is an allusion to Hermes Trismegistus as well in occult stuff. So in any case, that is maybe something we'll get to, but whoop.
Himself in a sensory deprivation tank for hours, hoping to unravel whatever mysteries wait in the darkness. It was during these trips that Lily began to believe the dolphins were attempting to telepathically communicate with him.
They programmed the trips, as I found out later, and took me out into the universe in a very expanded way.
They?
The dolphins.
Really?
The 3 dolphins, yes.
1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4.
As Margaret neared the end of her 10-week-long experiment, she was no closer to conversing with Peter in English than when she'd started.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
The fact that they thought they could do this in 10 weeks blows my mind as well. Oh, I'll just teach the dolphin English. We'll just talk, and it'll repeat my words, and it'll know what I'm saying. But then again, John C. Lilly thought that the dolphins were taking him to, outer space trips or something.
And after more than 2 months inside the dolphin house, with her sinuses stinging from salt water and her legs splotched with bruises, Margaret was exhausted.
Hello. Peter, I don't mean to bore you, but you say it right. Then we'll go on.
Her sexual interactions with Peter had become increasingly relaxed. I started out afraid of Peter's mouth and afraid of Peter's sex, Margaret wrote. It has taken Peter about 2 months to teach me, and me about 2 months to learn, then I am free to involve myself completely with both. She clarified that she made no secret of this aspect of their relationship. Although she described her own approach to it as loving, it was not meant to be private, and Margaret emphasized that
So it says, this is not a private thing. Peter and I have done this with other people present. But it is a very precious sort of thing. Peter is completely involved, and I involve myself to the extent of putting as much love into the tone, touch, and mood as possible. We do not have to respect his privacy, but we cannot help but respect his happiness. And this is about whatever kind of sexual encounters they had. This video doesn't go into details of it, but there was something going on there. You'll see.
Other people were often present. But these caveats would do little to stop their intimacy from ultimately defining the entire experiment once it became public knowledge. Once the 10 weeks were over, Margaret and Dr. Lilly had originally planned to resume the experiment for a longer duration, but Lilly found himself struggling to fund it. Although he had financed the creation of the Dolphin Laboratory on his own with the help of some cosmic coincidence, he was relying on a few financial backers, namely NASA, to sustain it.
Now here's the important part. So they're about to talk about the a meeting they had here in West Virginia in the National Radio Silent Zone, which is based on what is it, the largest radio telescope in the Northern Hemisphere. And they meet with certain intellectual, big brain, and influential people like Carl Sagan.
In 1961, Dr. Lilly had attended a meeting at the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia, along with many of America's premier astrophysicists, cosmologists, and biochemists. The meeting was called by a radio astronomer named Frank Drake, who was conducting the very first search for interstellar radio signals that might have come from extraterrestrial life. But everywhere Drake looked, the cosmos was speechless. He had the technology, but he needed the outside perspective of his peers to refine his searching methods. Their meeting, which included a young Carl Sagan, led to the Drake equation, a formula used to determine the likelihood of a planet being home to alien life, giving his search the narrowed parameters he'd hoped for. But there was a complication. one that prompted Dr. Lilly's invitation to the meeting. Even if they were successful in finding an alien civilization, one with an entirely different evolutionary environment, how would they communicate with them? There was a feeling that this effort to communicate with dolphins, Carl Sagan later wrote, was in some sense comparable to the task that will face us in communicating with intelligent species on another planet. Lilly argued that bridging the communication gap with non-human intelligent life on Earth was an urgent precursor to finding extraterrestrials, or more alarmingly, of them finding us. I believe it is important that we consider possible ways of dealing with non-human intelligent life before the duty is forced upon us, he wrote.
So, and this is an interesting thing too, because what we've done is we've given whatever civilization that may be out there a roadmap straight to Earth, which might not be a good idea. You know, that picture they showed was, of course, on, I can't remember the name of the, was it the Voyager? Was it the Voyager they sent off? I think that's what it was. Out into the outer solar system, which I think finally passed here just recently. And it's a picture of us and how to get here. I had a pretty funny meme about that too, about going, the aliens saying, hey, this is pretty creepy. Don't send us naked pictures in a, map to your house. But in any case, it's these things these people just take on, right? They just take this kind of stuff on, and it's weird and it's strange. And they just see themselves as, well, I have to do this, I have to figure this out. And you know what? If there are aliens out there, we have to tell them where they live, which could be, if a reality, a complete disaster as well. Of course, no one cares about aliens right now because all the other stuff going on as the government is releasing documentation of UFOs or UAVs. So,
in John C. Lilly, Frank Drake and Carl Sagan believed they had found a unique kind of brilliance, and a kindred spirit who was unafraid of what his scientific contemporaries thought of him. They were so impressed that they commemorated their union with handmade pins and their unofficial group title, the Order of the Dolphins. NASA, then only a few years old, gave Lilly a grant through their biosciences program, and the members of the Order of the Dolphins would regularly send each other coded messages to decipher, stoking their excitement. And over the subsequent years, as their search of the cosmos for alien intelligence turned up nothing, the possibility of interspecies communication, at least in their lifetime, seemed to hinge on Lilly. Carl Sagan would regularly visit Lilly's lab on St. Thomas, where he would go scuba diving and interact with the dolphins. He wrote of one memorable encounter where he began petting a dolphin named Elvar, and after Sagan withdrew his hand, Elvar seemed to shout, "More." Sagan relayed the story to Dr. Lilly, who responded, "Good, that's one of the words he knows." But empirical reproducible evidence that dolphins were capable of learning and speaking a complex language at the conversational level continued to elude Lilly and Margaret, and the critics were beginning to outnumber the supporters. If 1, 2, 3 said with very poor intelligibility by a dolphin is indicative of the giant-brained animal's ability to speak, and therefore to learn language, one critic wrote, what is to be said of a parrot's clear-cut Polly wants a cracker? Furthermore, if the parrot is then given a cracker, have we established communication with an alien species? With nothing concrete to show...
Yeah, you ever ask your dog if it needs to go potty? I mean, there are certain things that are basic that we can understand, right? Language is very, very complex. We're actually born with all the phenoms to speak any language. And we actually die into our language. Those abilities to speak die away from our brain. They fade off as we solidify our language, which is also why it's easier to teach young children multiple languages. They also know that if not properly raised right, because of feral children, there is a point where you will not develop the ability to speak. It's actually incumbent on having attention and being spoken to and having conversations for you to learn English. There's a certain point where you just can't anymore, or not even English, any language, which is why many feral children, well, there's not many, but there's quite a few, but some feral children, they have found that never develop the ability to speak. So, and this goes back to things like IQ and all, if we talk about that, a lot of this has to do with the nurture at the early portion of the child's life, the food, those things. Ancient cultures always believed that women who were pregnant and nursing needed to eat special diets. Weston A. Price has probably done some of the best research on this, in my opinion. Now, it's older, but it's not crazy research like this, I can tell you that. He just went and observed these folks and talked with them in many different places that had robust, outstanding health. And they had no tooth decay, no heart disease, none of those things. So, again, my focus is always about how do we build strong societies, because our society is a weak one. We're going to have to go build new societies here very soon. And how do we maintain so it does not fall? Don't get me wrong, guys. I know that entropy is the nature of things, and I believe we live in a fallen world. So there you go.
For his efforts, funding for the Dolphin House was drying up. The remedy, Lilly thought, was for the dolphins and humans to converge on the same mental wavelength, and he would turn to his newfound substance for help.
A study was made of the effect of one of these on a cat, which, prior to receiving a dose of the agent, reacted normally when confined with a mouse. When exposed to an extremely small amount of the agent, the cat's personality completely changed.
Although a transgressive idea, Lilly was far from the only scientist giving acid to animals to see how they reacted. In fact, Lilly had already begun giving it to the other dolphins in the laboratory in an attempt to make them more communicative. After giving 100 micrograms to Pam, a typically timid dolphin, Dr. Lilly noticed her becoming more extroverted and eager to interact with him. But Margaret's problem with Peter wasn't that he was uncommunicative or introverted. Peter had the opposite problem.
Margaret? No, wrong. Margaret?
So they give LSD to these folks, to these dolphins, but, trust the science. And this goes on. It goes on to talk about Lilly's life after this experiment. In fact, I'm going to get to that point, I hope.
In general, fell short of what he and others who had put their trust in him had hoped. After the publication of his third book, Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer, which has been described as a guide to, quote, jailbreak the mind using LSD and sensory deprivation, Lilly began his ascent to counterculture juggernaut while also becoming a scientific outcast. By the late 1960s, LSD had also become the subject of public fear.
You are looking at a traveler who just bought a ticket for a very special kind of a trip. The cost? A few dollars. And his mind, over which he will very shortly have little or no control.
And Lilly was forced to return his allotment to Sandoz Laboratories due to new restrictions being placed on the substance. Without easy access to large quantities of lysergic acid, Lilly would continue the experiments on himself with ketamine, an anesthetic he called vitamin K. The frequency in which he subjected his body to it was punishing, injecting it into his thigh 24 times a day for weeks at a time, leading to such near-death experiences as passing out into a hot tub while under its effects.
Are you risking your life for that sort of thing? I don't think in terms of risk. Evolution. Pushing. Getting there. Fast.
When one is doing...
No. I'm sure some of you have seen the movie Altered States. It's a cult classic. A lot of that is based on this. And the idea that, again, man can evolve himself. That's what all of this is always about. The men are their own gods. And again, if you don't believe in the supernatural world, the mystical things, however you want to frame it or call it, that's fine. But understand the principle. And trust me, folks, no man is a god. There is no man that is intelligent enough to know all things and direct all things in life, nor are there any group of men that can do such a thing. Nor do I think that we can direct our evolution. And we are trying to do that. That's part of the World Economic Forum. That's what the Neuralink that Elon Musk is coming up with. We are trying to make ourselves into transhuman cybernetic beings. And all of this is, one, in my opinion, against God. But again, if you don't believe whatever, but it's against our nature. And I don't think it improves us. It actually dehumanizes us. And I talked about this a long time ago in one of the earlier videos I made, talking about cyberpunk and why the ideas of cyberpunk are so popular right now. And in part, it's a return to the 80s. It really is. People feel safer because that time for them that are younger, people my age, right, who are, like 40 or younger, who were born in the 80s. It's a return to that stability that they knew as a child. But also, it's relevant to the world that we live in today, and that these things are coming. And if you go into the original cyberpunk games, the various kinds of games, or even the books, right? William Gibson's book on Neuromancer, which really started it, even though I would say that Philip K. Dick was the grandfather of it. That's part of the story, is the losing your humanity as you become machine. So it's just really, this stuff is really interesting because I see how these folks think. And actually, instead of showing you the rest of this, let's just jump into the thing from Obama. And I want to watch this from the ghost body language lady, because she always makes good points. If you guys aren't good truth tellers, that is, or decipherers of truth and lies, if you have a bad BS meter, a lot of people do. It's, no fault of your own. They just are far too trusting. They're naive. If you have a bad one, she's a good person to watch because she'll tell you how to pick up on people's certain tics, certain things. So as you watch, pay attention to this and then hear all the words that Obama's saying, and I'll, dress this down a little bit. But I'm going to let it play. And guys, I'm going to get up for a second because I got to use the bathroom. So my apologies.
Doing Barack Obama today. We're just looking at his demeanor. I'm curious to see mentally how he's doing.
Everybody.
Partly because they were leaving, and partly because of what he thought might happen to the country.
You write about Sarah Palin, about her brief ascendancy, and you talk about dark spirits that had long been lurking on the edges of the Republican Party coming center stage. Did you ever think...
Well, he's not sitting in his normal position. I was sitting there looking at that. I was like, He's very tight. He's got his feet tucked underneath of him. He's really trying to be small. And he's not a short guy. Hunched over, hams collapsed in his lap. Like, what has humbled you?
It would get this dark?
No. I thought that there were enough guardrails institutionally that even after Trump was elected, that you would have the so-called Republican establishment who would say, okay, it's a problem if the White House doesn't seem to be concerned about Russian meddling.
So as he trips over his words in that, and he is being so guarded in his speech, and it comes tight, and you see his brain thinking it out, which words to you.
So what she just showed there, right? He tight-lipped, he kind of blew out, those little things, how he's moving. Like, you guys will pick up, obviously, I can't sit still. I talk with my hands. I got to readjust and move around a lot. A lot of that's because I have aches and pains and injuries and whatever else. In fact, right now, I just got up to use the bathroom. I can feel my hamstrings because I was doing Nordics yesterday. If you don't know, that's when you are on your shins, you strap yourself down and you go down like this. I can't do a full Nordic, but I'm working my range of motion there. So in any case, you get a sense of how someone talks, and we've seen Obama a lot in the public. So she's examining this. Now, if you hear his rhetoric here, he doesn't know. It's very obvious. He doesn't know how to explain this away. He's not prepared enough, apparently. Or he's just outright lying, which of course he is. Talking about how bad the Trump administration made things. Well, yeah, they made it bad for the globalists, sort of, a little bit, right? They at least gave him a hard time. Now, I think the Trump administration was largely inept because he kept letting the swamp into his administration. And he should have just said, screw it. All you guys are out. We'll see. We'll see how 2024 goes. Maybe he'll come back in. I'd like to see him and Ron DeSantis on a ticket together. That'd be amazing. Amazing! Enough fortification and rhinos help? Yeah.
I thought there was enough guardrails, and he's pausing through all of this, looking for the words. And in a normal situation, you wouldn't do that. People do that in general when they're trying, one, to not expose something, or two, not to offend something or someone.
Or it's a problem if we have...
And that's my other favorite. It's a problem if he throws it out there, you see him throw it out there, and then he has to stop. It's like, oh, what do I say? And the song comes out. He's really trying to think and find the words.
A president who's saying that, neo-Nazis marching in Charlottesville, they're good people on both sides. That's a little bit beyond the...
No, he knows that's a lie. He absolutely knows that's a lie, folks. But again, we have to double down on that. Always. That has been debunked 1,000,001 times. He literally said, Trump literally said, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis. How absurd this is.
He really is tripping over himself. Now, mind you, this actually is not unnormal for Barack Obama. He sings the song a lot if he doesn't have a teleprompter. He's got a whole symphony on the song. But usually when you see him struggle with the and he's trying to work it out, he doesn't do that much of a brain search. You don't see him wildly go from side to side and looking around, down, and all over the place.
Right. Unlike me, I rewatch, not every video I make, but I rewatch my stuff, and you see me roll my eyes and stuff, not because I'm rolling my eyes, but because I'm thinking. I'm engaging my brain before I speak. I found this interesting too here. In the corner it says, on fatherhood, leadership, and legacy. I would not in any way, shape, or form take any advice from Obama on any of that. I mean, it seems potentially true from photographs that his daughter was hooking up with Hunter Biden. Now, I'm not saying that is true. I'm saying that it seems that might have been true. This is not someone I would take advice from on any of these issues. He's definitely not a leader. He was a puppet candidate, right? He was the black guy who was well spoken, as old Joe said. Oh, he's really clean and really well spoken. You don't normally get a black guy like that, do you? That's what Joe Biden basically said about Obama, and it's true. And Oprah picked him. Was like, this is the one. Started calling him the one. Everyone talks about hope and change. You didn't change anything, man. You made it worse. You continued the downward spiral. For 16 years, I like to talk about this all the time. For 16 years, Americans got like what, $100, $200 per family pay raise, generally speaking. That is in real-time money adjusted for inflation. Under Trump, they got a $5,000 raise annually. The average American. Hope and change? Why? Because you got a crap healthcare system that's just a boiling frog step along the way to get us into a nationalized healthcare system so we can have Medicare and Medicaid for all. Medicare for all. Let's not forget that and Social Security make up over 50% of the budget, if I'm not mistaken. Entitlements, folks, and we're drowning. We are drowning. And as all these things go, again, we're inflating our money. Now, the president has no say over that. The Federal Reserve does what it wishes. But we are inflating our money. We are shutting down our pipelines. We are basically not building any sort of infrastructure without climate change. And you can see that is evidenced by the talks recently about Biden's infrastructure plan. Well, it's not going to happen. And if it does happen, the trillions of dollars that they're going to throw in there is just going to inflate things more. And I really do believe that based on statements from the UN and all these climate activist folks, they want everyone to be in cities and not in the countryside because they want the countryside to replenish itself because we as human beings, we're a virus and a cancer upon the earth. We have to let Mother Nature take over. This is crazy. Crazy hubris, crazy Malthusianism.
He's just kind of sitting still and like his brain has had a stutter. But in this instance, he's literally tripping over himself, looking for the words to come out. That's usually the sign of a deceptive person. Not that, he was a saint prior, but he really didn't have to lie to you. He could omit things. That's his favorite way.
Pale. And the degree to which we did not see that Republican establishment say, hold on, time out, that's not acceptable, that's not who we are, but rather be cowed into accepting it. And then...
So no one was cowed into accepting anything. You all continue to push very, very left, and you start pissing people off. The end. There's nothing acceptable about what you all on the left have done for the last 100 years. We talk about, I talk about often how this goes back to the early progressive era, but I find it as well some form of revenge, party revenge, in that during Reconstruction, the Republicans were horrible. They were. They didn't allow the Democrats to have any power. Once the Democrats got power, they never lost it for 100 some odd years. And I'm not into this two-party thing, guys. I tend to side more with Republicans, but they're pretty much awful. So I'm an independent, have been for many, many years. But all I can say is that everything that he says here is just absolutely absurd. He's like, well, Republicans were decent before. Oh, like you weren't calling George W. Bush and everyone else racist back in the day? By the way, the Bush family and the Obamas, they have a very, very long history together. So, let's see here. Let me check the chat real quick. You guys have been talking in there and I haven't been paying attention to y'all. Raphael, enough fortification and Rhinos to help. They will both serve Israel, so they might. We'll see about that. I don't know. I don't know about DeSantis and that whole thing, but yes, that all goes back to the Rhodes Society, Zionism, the world government, and again, it's going to happen. I'm not trying to be pessimistic here. It's just going to happen. I'm not trying to have it happen, but this is the way of the world. This is the nature of things. This is the seduction of power. I don't get why a lot of people on this channel would be against Israel. Their military history is amazing. I'm not against Israel. I'm not a Zionist, though. There's a difference. Yes, Michelle Obama could potentially be. The Rhino establishment was very good in doing what they did. So here are my thoughts on Zionism. The Crown and the Rhodes Scholars wanted to prop up Israel, as well as the UN. Of course, the UN decries Israel all the time because I don't quite have this figured out, but basically they don't like the decision that they made. I don't know, by giving them a nation. It's crazy, or maybe it's a PSYOP, it's controlled opposition kind of thing. But Cecil B. Rhodes started the Rhodes Society. Carol Quigley documented all this stuff quite well. There are other people who have talked about it over the years. They wanted to bring about a one world government, and they wanted to bring the United States under the authority of the Crown again. And there are also ties within, say, the Catholic Church and Jesuits and all this other stuff. Basically, what we have is we have a lot of globalist organizations fighting each other for power. And who's going to be the one in charge? Right now, my prediction is China. China's going to be in charge within, 10 or 15 years, probably. By 2050, for sure. So, there's that. But yes, I would say Israel has a right to exist. I don't have any problem with that. I just don't want to be, giving them money like we do. It's my money. Or actually, it's just magical numbers, printed on a computer screen, and they give them that. But I don't want to give foreign aid to anybody, generally speaking, because we have enough problems here at home. And you could talk about the whole world police thing. Fine, we could be the world police, and that means we're not a sovereign nation. That means we're in a global government. Plain and simple. And we are, guys. If you watch everything that Biden says, all the leaders of the world, right? Biden's build back better, build back better. That's Great Reset, World Economic Forum language. They all talk about it because they're all in lockstep. And you have people like Tim Pool going, I think it's a standalone complex. You're insane, Tim. No, there's no standalone complex here. There are multiple, groups of people trying to get power. Sure. But these aren't standalone complex. They get together. What do you think Davos is? Xi Jinping spoke there. They all do. All these companies. And they tell you that these things must happen. These people believe that because they have the power and authority that they have, the wealth and the influence, that they are gods. It is plain and simple.
Finally culminating in January 6th, where what originally was, oh, don't worry, this isn't going anywhere, we're just letting Trump and others vent. And then suddenly you now have large portions of an elected Congress going along with the falsehood that...
what falsehood?
There were problems with the election.
And the leadership.
Why is that a falsehood? Because you stated it? Because people stated it? What about the Time magazine article of the fortification? How did we get, what was it, 30 million extra registered voters? All of a sudden? How did that happen? Lots of questions. Absentee ballots, legitimate. Blanket mail-in ballots, not so much. But no, it's the most secure election ever. But when we didn't have any of these problems and Trump won, well, it was Russians, and they hacked everything, and Russia. No responsibility, right?
For the GOP, briefly for one night when they still had this sort of scent of fear in them, going against the president.
And then poof, suddenly everybody was back in line. Now, the reason for that is because the base believed it. The base believed it because this had been told to them not just by the president, but by the media that they watch. And
well, the media that you watch lied to everybody, and we are finding vindication for that constantly. Where I was staying in D.C. was right by Lafayette Park. It just came out last week that the media that these people listen to were right about him not clearing Lafayette Park for a photo op, that happened long before. And the Secretary of the Interior, who's still in the Biden administration now, as he was in the Trump administration before, has said this. So what are you talking about, Obama? And this, one of my favorite things was with the media was Trump lies, Trump lies, Trump lies. No, Trump exaggerates. He's not really necessarily lying, though. He's actually pretty open. He says things he probably shouldn't. Obama, that dude lied. He lied hard. Who was it? Trayvon Martin could have been my kid, could have been my son. Are you serious, man? You're a multimillionaire. You went to Ivy League schools. You were given a privileged, very privileged life. Trayvon Martin, he was a gangster kid. So what are you saying? You're saying because his skin color, he could have been your son? No, I don't think so in any way, shape, or form.
Nobody stood up and said, stop. This is enough. This is not true. I won't say nobody. Let me correct it. There were some very brave people who did their jobs, like the Secretary of State in Georgia, who was then viciously attacked for it. And all those congressmen started looking around and they said, you know what? I'll lose my job.
Yeah. But your job is to represent the people, not your globalism, not your policies, your politics, or anything else. It's to represent the people. So if the people have an issue, then, maybe when Arizona does an audit, as well as some other states, you shouldn't send 72 lawyers to stop it. Why would you want to stop an audit if you won fair and square? Simple question. Why wouldn't you just let it go through? Nothing's going to happen. The election's not going to be overturned, guys. I know the Q people say that, but that's because they're beyond gone. Q is a psyop. It is meant to get you stirred up, or whatever the hell it is. It was probably meant to cause something like this so people could be demonized. And I said it before all this happened. Don't go there. Don't go there. It's not smart. Do not go. Because if you go, these things will happen. And guess what? We know today that there are people sitting in solitary confinement, isolated in federal prison because they walked through the Capitol building while they took selfies with police, and the police let them in. Because it doesn't matter what we do on the right. This is why I don't really advocate for going to these things or protesting or doing whatever. And I know we need to make change. But change needs to start locally, folks. Because this system is here. It's not going away. If it goes away, it's because there's a regime, or true regime change. And that means a civil war. And that's a bad thing. And likely to come, because we're in the midst of one now. It's just not hot.
I'll get voted out of office. Another way of saying this is I didn't expect that there would be so few people who would say, well, I don't mind losing my office because this is too important. America's too important.
Some things are more important than just...
Our democracy is too important.
Don't have democracy, Obama. And I'm telling you, every time they say that, they're talking about their democracy. The elites, little circle. The Anderson Coopers and the Obamas and the Bushes and their little democracy.
We didn't see that. Now, I'm still the hope and change guy. And so my hope is that the tides will turn. But that does require each of us to understand that this experiment in democracy is...
This is actually quite painful because his brain is searching so hard. It takes forever to sit there and see the body react to whatever it attaches to. It's like, oh, good God, man, spit it out. There's fight, flight, and then there's scared shitless. You can't even move. And his brain seems to be stuck in that. Anderson Cooper tries to jump in. He's like, you hear him in his breath, relief that someone else is going to come in and rescue him from his brain fart. I think I've seen enough because this is just a pain in the ass to watch. I'll watch a few more minutes.
It's not self-executing. It doesn't happen just automatically. It happens because each successive generation says, these values, these truths we hold self-evident. This is important.
Have you noticed that line's been going around a lot? I think Biden says it in like every other speech anymore. It's lip service that they don't mean. What do you mean each successive generation? Each successive generation since the beginning of the 20th century has decided that we are going to enslave our fellow men. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Obama doesn't believe that. You think that he believes that? You think the people in D.C. believe that? You think Nancy Pelosi believes that she is equal to you? No. So this one, I don't know if I'm going to watch, but really, this is a live State Department. This is from Reuters. Yeah, come on, mouse. But this was just telling, as they're talking to, Mr. Ned Price here, and their involvement with other nations, global affairs, and their trade deals and whatever else, and how we are encouraging them to do this and that. It's just telling. Now, maybe you all don't think that what I'm saying is true. Okay, fine. Be naive then. Be naive. We became the world power after the Second World War. We established a world monetary system that was solidified in the 70s, right, under Nixon. And we are using the petrodollar, of course. We lead everything. We've been the world police. We are listening to the UN and the WHO when it comes to health things and environmentalism. You know, I speak about it all the time. Many of you probably don't know, but the very codes, housing codes, building codes, in many of your local governments that they must follow for environmental reasons are set by the UN. Those policies are set by the United Nations. I didn't vote for any of those folks. Why are they affecting my local government? So let's go over some of this stuff with Carlin now. This is just for your information. Borysenko. Okay. I want to say Borysenko because it's an old Russian weightlifting coach. So, you know, and you hang out in the circles I hang out with, you learn a lot of Eastern European names, and then that's been stuck in my mind for 15 years now. And here she comes along with the same name, but without the H. So it confuses me. So is this about it? I don't know. We'll get it to where it needs to be.
Created a completely new legal.
Okay, here we go.
Hiring. This was damaging the party. It was all about the tweets. This entire Joletta Jarvis.
A little bit further back. All about the tweets. This is true. I actually saw one of the tweets from the New Hampshire Libertarian Party the other day about how that it literally said, this is a quote, right, that John McCain's aneurysm saved more lives than Dr. Fauci. Pretty spicy. But, you know, you got to fight the culture, guys. We got to build culture. You got to fight the culture. We cannot be these polite people just going, oh, well, you know, okay, well, we lost this one. We'll get the next one. Or, well, the Democrats, they'll call us mean names, so we shouldn't push forward. They don't care. They will burn down your home and drag you to the streets and murder you. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but they will. We know because we've seen it. And maybe it's not so much in America today, but we've seen it elsewhere in other nations around the world throughout history. We definitely seen the burning down of homes and neighborhoods, the beating of people in the streets. But yeah, this is a problem. And this lady, this not Carlin, but the lady who runs Joletta, who was in the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire, She just wants power. She's not being a libertarian. Oh, your ideas don't meet with mine, and I don't like the way you're doing things. Therefore, I'm going to throw a tantrum and create my own party, and I'm going to have the national party say that this is my party. And when Carlin gets into the details here, it's incredible. You know, but mean tweets, right? Mean tweets. So this should be about it.
To say that the entire executive committee, minus her, had constructively resigned because they broke the bylaws when they voted to expel Jackie. Now, it's important to know that Joletta, in her position as chair of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, did not object to the vote taking place. She didn't do anything. She allowed the vote to take place and then used the vote as a reason to say every member of the executive committee that had been duly elected at the state convention back in March had constructively resigned, leaving Joletta as the only member of the executive committee. And she then at that point decided to appoint her own executive committee without telling any member of the party, okay? So the real reason that Joletta did this is not because She was pissed about Jackie Perry getting expelled from the party. It wasn't really because that she thought the executive committee actually broke the rules. The reason that Gilletta has perpetrated all of this is because of tweets. It's entirely because of tweets. Gilletta did a whole hour-long video the evening that she started this coup attempt in which she explained, I mean, she spent so much time talking about the offensive tweets and how this was damaging the party. It was all about the tweets. This entire Gilletta Jarvis staged a coup d'etat because she was upset about Twitter. And so apparently she was also like really upset that the people running the Twitter account, the communications committee, were not listening to Gilletta's helpful advice when she was like, don't tweet based stuff. Because they only wanted to tweet stuff that was like thoroughly unoffensive. Okay, so Gilletta is pissed about tweets. She also is conspiring to use this vote that was designed to protect her in order to expel the entire executive committee from the party.
So, the backstory to this, you can go watch Carlin's video later if you want. Or she did a stream yesterday. I wish I'd known when it was live because I would have called in. She had people call in. But either way, no biggie. But she did a stream yesterday about this whole thing with a member of the Libertarian Party who is part of the Mises Caucus. And if you guys aren't aware of that, go over to Radical Liberations channel. I believe he talks about it. He just had Thomas DiLorenzo on the other day. And I was fortunate enough to speak with the Mad Mercenary the other week when I was over on Sniper's channel. So, and hopefully we'll have him over on the Unjustify the Memes here in the future, depending on whenever this baby comes. So, but, he was propping it up a good bit. And the Mises Caucus is not a divisive libertarian caucus. It's about basic tenets of freedom, and it has a lot of leeway because the problem with the libertarians is they're always infighting over stupid stuff. It's like the libertarians not being behind Trump. I'm not a huge Trump fan, guys, but he was better than nothing. He's better than we've got in, I don't know, forever. Maybe since Reagan. Reagan wasn't perfect either, but I mean, come on. Like, I don't like his tweets. He's mean. Oh, he says this stupid stuff. Do you like gas prices being low? Do you like being energy independent? Do you like not having wars? Do you like Middle East peace agreements? Do you like having more money in your paycheck? Those are the things that I'm a little bit more worried about, a little bit more concerned with. Practicalities, but mean tweets. That's right, honey. Today is Trump's birthday. And I think my wife wanted to have the baby today so that Trump and the baby could be, born on the same day. All right, let's keep going on with this.
Gilletta created a completely new legal entity. She completed a completely new legal entity, and I believe that the date on the form for her creating this new political entity is June 9th. Okay? So this is important. Dates are important. We have this letter on June 7th. On June 8th, they expelled Jackie Perry. On June 9th, Gilletta creates an entirely new legal entity. She calls it the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. She rewrites the bylaws, she appoints a new executive committee, and she also said that in order to become a member of this new party, you have to swear an oath that she has unilaterally written. And she said that this letter from Joe Bishop Henchman basically gave her permission to do this. So she's using this to try to say, I'm the party, and in order to be in my New Hampshire Libertarian Party, you have to agree to follow my bylaws that I wrote without a vote and take the oath that I wrote. Now, in the course of doing this, she declared that all members of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire were no longer a part of the party.
Does any of this sound like libertarian tenets? Because I know many of you come from that. I come from that. I was part of Campaign for Liberty in Washington County, Maryland. I was part of the leadership. That is the more sober-minded Ron Paul style libertarians, right? I can tell you that This is not in any way, shape, or form about freedom. This is about this lady's ego and her power. It is absolutely absurd, but this is why the Libertarian Party can never do anything or get anything off. And of course, we had Jo Jorgensen, pandering to BLM and whatever else during her, presidential campaign, which was just absurd. And then yesterday on Carlin's show, her stream, one of the callers talked about, socialists infiltrating the party. This is all the stuff that many of us know about. And yet they're just inviting them in. And again, like I said, you have someone like I spoke with, Adam Kolkesh, who's like, oh no, this is the way of the future. And I'm like, dude, you do not understand your optics problem. You have a huge optics problem because you are not principled enough. The party is not maintaining its principles. And like I said, they wouldn't get behind and support Trump. I don't just mean the party members per se, but people who claim to be libertarians as far as philosophically. And I would always say that. I'm a little L libertarian, a philosophical libertarian. I've diverted to using classical liberalism as the terminology because I don't want to be associated with the crazy backwards part of the libertarians, the law-libertarians, right?
Even though we'd already paid dues. Now, of course, none of this is true. There is still a recognized New Hampshire affiliate. We're going to get into that in a second. The other thing, okay, so let me make sure I get all the points. She appointed a new executive committee for her new political entity that apparently all voted in a small group of turncoats that Jilletta brought with her. She also, there are weird things that Jilletta changed in the bylaws for her new party. One of the things that she changed was that it expanded her term as chair from 1 year to 4 years. She quadrupled the length of her term as chair.
So she gave herself more power. Folks, I'm telling you, power always corrupts. This lady is insane. I mean, I don't know much about her, but the fact that she could just think she can do all this and is now demanding the National Libertarian Party to recognize her as the chair and her as the only legitimate libertarian organization in New Hampshire is insane.
The other thing she did is she instituted a new seasoning requirement, which said that new members of the party are not allowed to vote on issues related to the party until they've been members for 2 years. Now, let's just think about that for a second. Jilletta has formed an entirely new entity. This is not really the Libertarian Party in New Hampshire, but Jilletta formed a new political organization, called it the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, and then said in order to vote in my new party, you have to be a member of it for 2 years, and I have a 4-year term as chair, which literally means that there would be no voting members of this party until 2023, because it was completely established as a new political entity. Jilletta then took away access that the rightful Libertarian Party had to all of their social media and their website. So Jilletta, in the process of doing this, while she was still chair of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party, formed a new entity, named herself chair, and stole the digital assets of the current New Hampshire Libertarian Party, to include all social media accounts, to include the website, to include the membership list. They turned off the donation button on the website because they didn't get a hold of the bank accounts, because the bank accounts were still in the name of the actual elected Libertarian Party treasurer, Sean. So they didn't get that, but they stole everything else, and they haven't given it back yet. And this is really the biggest controversy that exists right now, because the rightful New Hampshire Libertarian Party is like, dude, this is theft. This is blatantly against our principles. This is like literal theft of our
And she's providing a loyalty test. And this is the other thing. They wouldn't support Trump, and, he only wants loyal people to him. None of the left were saying this. Of course. What, you want to go into an administration if people aren't loyal to you? I want to lead you. And, but people around me, though, I don't want them to be loyal to me at all. Like, what? Anyways, aside from that. So she wanted a loyalty test. These people had to be in the party for 2 years, and then they can't do anything. Tell me that this is not someone who is obsessed with their own ego and power. She is the one who gets to dictate how the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire runs. And if you don't like it, you can get out. In fact, no, don't get out. You don't do that on your own. I'll throw you all out forcibly. And then I'll steal your money. I'll steal your social media. Now, I don't think a third party is a viable thing in the United States. You can get into McCain-Feingold and campaign finance reform and all that stuff. Basically, the party systems are entrenched, ensconced, and the laws are made to keep them in power. So I don't think the libertarians are ever going to do anything. The best thing that they can do is educate and infiltrate the Republican Party. But the best thing that really any of us can do is focus on the local issues and stop worrying about the larger national scale of things. But I bring this up because, again, you see this, despite what people say, what party they're in, what position they're in, once they get a little taste of power, they go off the rails really quick. And it's really hard for good men to not succumb to the seduction of power.
Property, and they're demanding that the LNC, because of this letter from Joe.
All right, yes, thanks for showing up. This is not even normally how I when I do my stream today, but I will get with your tweet, and hopefully as soon as I'm done, I'm about to finish up here in about probably at the bottom of the hour here. But I appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone who has showed up so far. By the way, I think Val, did you give me, if you're still here, did you give me a diamond over on DLive? Because I got another diamond in here, so I appreciate that. And I got a couple people watching on Entropy, I see, but no one in the chat or anything. By the way, guys, that's one of the great uses of Entropy, because as far as I'm aware, free speech is important to those folks, and therefore you can say whatever you please in the Entropy chat, unlike here on YouTube, which if you say something not within Susan's parameters in my chat, it might get my entire channel nuked, because YouTube are a bunch of corpo scumbags. All right, let's watch a few more minutes of this, and I'm going to get out of here, guys.
Joe Bishop henchmen. They're demanding that the LNC give them back their property right now. Okay. Now, here is the goal. Here is what Gilletta was trying to achieve. Gilletta's goal is to get the National Party to disaffiliate with the current party, the one that she just left, to form this new political entity, and instead affiliate with Gilletta's new rogue party that she is calling the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. It is a separate legal entity that she unilaterally formed because she was mad about tweets. Now, here's my position. The rest of this is just my opinion on the whole situation. One, there is no possible way in hell that the LNC can justify disaffiliating with the current duly elected New Hampshire Libertarian Party, because the majority of the executive committee still exists in that party. Just because Gilletta chose to leave and form her new party does not mean that the Libertarian Party automatically chose to disaffiliate with that and to follow her. Gilletta is not representative of the party, no matter if she has this letter or not. However, furthermore, she procured this letter on June 7th. She did not form this new legal entity until June 9th, according to paperwork. So, what is being referenced in this June 7th letter is the current New Hampshire Libertarian Party, the one that Gilletta was still the chair over before she created a completely new legal entity and named herself the chair of that. This is not referencing the new party. This is reference.
So, again, I'm not going to play this whole thing, but she basically, look, someone doxed her, the party excised this person, and she then got drunk with power and declared herself queen. It's an interesting tale. It's quite interesting, because just like Carlin pointed out there, and I've been saying, she essentially took it upon herself to reject all of the tenets of the Libertarian Party and said, well, I myself am the party, and you plebs, you need to bow down and give me fealty. And with this fealty, after 2 years of your loyalty, I shall give you the right to then vote. I mean, come on. Oh, it's absolutely insane. All right, so I got a lot of chat to go through because I have not been good about attending this today, but I would try to scan through here real quickly because I'm going to try and get off here in about 3 minutes, guys. But I do so much appreciate you all for showing up. As always, I will be back tomorrow with predictions from the past. We will go back and read the things that we were reading before, as well as some other stuff I have in the works. And maybe we'll cover some news. I don't know. Let me think here. I know that I wanted to show you guys a video about astral theology and the misrepresentation of the astral theological representation of Christ, like in the movie Zeitgeist, and how that was a reflection of other ancient religions. This is not true. This was debunked actually in the 2nd century by by Justin Martyr. But aside from that, there is actual scholarship on it, and there's a pretty good video you cannot find on the internet anymore, but I have ripped, called Externalizing the Hierarchy, based on Alice A. Bailey's work. And again, I like the occult stuff. You guys know I like the conspiracy stuff, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. And in any case, let me go back. I'll go backwards here. Well, we're all saying body is. Yes, he is. Hopefully I'll talk to her here in a little bit. See what's up. Get a better mouse here. So I saw this earlier. Juan Cholo said, communists, socialists always go after two groups, capitalists and Jews. The order may change, but they always go after those groups for some reason. Well, you know, I said earlier about the UN obfuscating the UN going after Israel all the time, even though they established them. One thing you could say is that they're perhaps obfuscating the amount of control and power that Israel exudes, or Jewish folks throughout banking and media and whatever else. Now, I'm not one of those people that are like, oh, the Jews run everything. I don't think so. I think it's a lot of competing interests, but regardless, it's really a game of the Iron Throne, folks. That's all it is. This is why I can never support monarchy. It's Game of Thrones. Everyone's going to murder everyone until they get their way. That's how this works. Or they're going to fight over the ultimate power and control of things. This is the system of the world. As I often put it, in the metaphysical perspective of 1st and 2nd century Christianity, this is the kingdom of Satan here on earth. And Christ's message, his good news was, behold, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And this is also why we pray this in our prayers. That is the Lord's Prayer. You know, Father, thy kingdom come and thy will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. They asking God to bring these things forth. So you have to really understand that. And a lot of modern Christians do not. They don't have any idea. A lot of modern Christians have such a skewed theology. It blows my mind, but whatever. Yes, there are non-religious Jews. Yes, saw that earlier. I can't go through every little comment Is wrote down here. It says, see something in the realms of possibility. Michelle's a man. Yeah, we read that. Rhino establishment was very good in doing what they did. And then Yes says, but the Israelis only exist because of Zionism, though, Bill. Well, yeah, I know. I mean, of course. All I'm saying is I'm not a Zionist. I don't know, but that's all. Israel exists because of people like Cecil B. Rhodes. That's why Israel exists. Because the Zionists who had power and money thought that, and a lot of Christian Zionists think this, that there's going to be a third temple built. There's not going to be a third temple built, guys. There's currently a mosque there right now. It's just not going to happen. And the third temple in the Bible is you. The temple of God is the body of Christ. There's a reason why this language all relates to each other. I still don't get why a lot of people on this channel would be against Israel. Yeah, I read that. Let's go a little bit further up. He is saying, I love spiritual and religious stuff. Looks like most of you guys are talking amongst each other. It was easier for me to follow earlier. So, yeah, I don't need to go through every ounce of chat. But, hey guys, again, I appreciate you watching so much. It helps me be motivated to do this every day. Trust me, I'm compelled to do this every day. So, not really that hard of a thing, but it warms my heart. It helps me. Like if I'm starting to go, oh man, no one's watching this. No one wants to listen to me. It's discouraging, but you all showing up, my regulars, are very much appreciated. And I guess that's about all I got for the day. I'm going to have to get in the habit of streaming again. When you take like 5 days off, which I did on purpose, 4 days since I did the Ins Justify the Memes. But when you take that much time off, literally, it takes a minute to get back in the groove, which is kind of why I did these things today. I did want to cover a lot of this. Some of this came up, of course, over the weekend, but I did want to cover a lot of this Friday. And like I said, I'm just not going to be able to do that with the laptop that I purchased, but I will get that upgraded as soon as I can financially do such a thing. And maybe another $100. It was a, low tier laptop, but maybe another $100 of, upgrading the RAM and maybe a bigger SD card will get it working properly. And then I have some things in the works for that because it is a laptop. I will probably stream, if that's the case, using it through StreamYards. And I'm working on an intro to the show, which is going to be fun. So, some video editing stuff, putting together an intro to the show so I don't have to, are we live yet? Are we live? I can just let that play and, all that stuff. So, all right. Any parting shots before we get out of here? Nope, no one else. All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching again. This has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.